It doesn't happen all the time, but every once in a while, when I tell a story that I've told several times before, sometimes in the middle of the story, I'll get this feeling like I didn't know what that meant. In other words, I get a new meaning as I tell the story. This next story, one that I got from Mary Hamilton, is kind of like that. It goes something like this. Once upon a time, a young princess sat by an open window in the palace, combing her long, beautiful hair. And as she was combing her hair, a dove flew in the window and took the barrette that she was intending to put in her hair and flew away. And she said, The next morning she was sitting by the same window, combing her long, beautiful hair, and the same dove flew in, and as she laid her brush down, grabbed the brush and flew out. And she said, Well, I never. The third morning she was sitting by the same window, and the same pesky dove flew in and grabbed the comb that she was using to comb her hair and flew away. And the young princess says, That does it. And she got out of the castle and started following the dove. Now, the dove would fly a little ways and wait until she just about caught up with it, and then would fly and wait, fly and wait, fly and wait. And so it was that the dove drew the princess deep into woods that she had never been in before. She came to an open clearing, and on the other side of the clearing was a hut, miserable little hut. But as she watched, out of the hut came the most handsome young man she had ever seen. And so she approached him and said, Excuse me, but I'm a princess from the castle back there, and some pesky dove has been stealing from me for 3 days now, and I followed it into the woods, but now it's disappeared. Do you know anything about it? Have you seen it? And the young man said, I know all about the dove. I am the dove. I am under a spell. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I do know, I have learned, that you are the only one that can break the spell. She said, Only me? What do I have to do? He said, You need to sit in the chair by the open window of the hut. And you need to sit there for 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day when I fly away over the mountains. And the spell will be broken, and I'll be free. She said, Are you sure that this is the only way to break the spell? And are you sure that I'm the only one to do it? He said, Absolutely. She said, Well, give it a try. So she sat in the chair, and she sat there for a full year, a month, and a day. Well, as she sat there, the sun shone in the window and burned her skin, the snow fell on her, animals came and lived in her clothes and in her hair, and her skin became dry, crackling and peeling, and her clothes became turned into rags, and she was miserable. But she sat there the whole time. At the end of a year, a month, and a day, the young prince walked in and looked at her sitting there in her bedraggled condition, and he looked down at her and he said, You did all this for a man? And he spit on her and walked away. She was crushed. She didn't know what to do. She cried. She'd sat there so long she couldn't even stand up, and so she slid herself out of the chair and crawled out of the hut and crawled across the clearing and collapsed under the shade of a tree and slept. And she slept a long time. And when she woke up, there were 3 older women with her. And they said, we know what happened to you, and we're going to help you make it right. So the first woman touched her hair, and the hair that was so dry and crackling all of a sudden became beautiful and smooth and more beautiful than it had ever been before. And the second woman touched her skin, and the scales fell off, and the dried skin became smooth, and it was more beautiful than before. And the third woman touched her rags, and they turned into one of the most beautiful gowns the young woman had ever seen. And she was made a princess. And immediately a castle appeared, and the 3 women became her handmaidens. Now it just so happens that the castle that was next to hers was inhabited by the young men who had become a prince, who had become a king, the same young man that she had saved from the spell. And when he woke up the next morning, this castle that had not been there the night before, he was trying to figure out what to do about it when he happened to look and see the young princess walking across an open window. And she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. And he said, I have to have her. And so he sent a messenger, one of his servants, over to the castle and asked if it would be possible for them to meet. And the answer came back, yes. The princess will meet on one condition. You must build a platform that extends from your balcony to her balcony and cover it 2 inches deep with rose petals. And you have to stand on your balcony. You must not step on the platform, and you must not speak. And the princess will come over and meet you. He said, great. So he ordered his carpenters to stop anything else they were doing and start building the platform. And he told all of his other servants to stop what they were doing and go collect rose petals. And sure enough, after a while, the platform was built. It was covered with 2 inches of rose petals. The young prince king stood on his platform, his balcony, and didn't say a thing, and watched her as she walked across. Now the women, her handmaidens, said, this is the way it works. We want you to start walking across the platform. When you get about a third of the way, we want you to pretend that you've stepped on a thorn and collapse, and we'll come get you. Princess wondered what was going on, but she said, okay. So the stage was set. She got on the platform, walked slowly across, got about a third of the way, and she said, oh, I stepped on a thorn. You're trying to kill me. And she collapsed. And the 3 women ran out, picked her up, and as they carried her back to her castle, they glared at the young king. Well, he was confused. He was beside himself. And the rumors started coming out of her castle that the young princess was dying. And then after a while, the rumors changed. She was not dying, but her leg was swollen to 40 times its normal size. And she'd never be the same again. And then before long, the rumor was that she was okay. She was going to live and she would be all right. So after that was substantiated, the young king sent another messenger servant over to see if perhaps they could try again. The word came back that yes, they could, but this time he must tear down the old platform because it probably had a thorn in it, and build a new one and cover it 3 inches deep with jasmine petals. And so the same scene, and he ordered his carpenters to tear it down, build a new one. His rest of his servants were out collecting jasmine petals, and the stage was set once more. Same instructions. He couldn't step on the platform, and he couldn't speak. And the princess started to walk, and the handmaiden said, now this time you get about halfway across before you pretend you stepped on a thorn and you collapse. And sure enough, the young princess walked slowly out on the platform. The young king was waiting expectantly. She got about halfway, stepped on a thorn, so to speak, and said, "Oh, I know you're trying to kill me now," and collapsed. The women ran out, picked her up, and as they carried her back, they glared at the young king. And he was beside himself. But he decided to try one more time. The rumors were the same, that she was going to die, that he saw a priest going in, and even saw a bishop going in the palace. Then after a while, the rumors had changed. She was not going to die, but her leg was swollen to 40 times its normal size. And then finally came the rumor, the message, that she was going to live. Well, they had to try one more time. So he sent a servant over and said, "Is it possible, could we please try to meet again?" And the word came back that the princess would never rest until she could see him in his coffin. Well, that can mean several things. So he said, he called in his best craftsmen, and they made a coffin to the exact size. They kept the lid off, of course. And he crawled in the coffin and had his servants take him all over the country, saying to people, "Come and see the king in his coffin." And when they came to the princess' castle, she came out, looked down into the coffin, and she said, "You did all this for a woman?" And she spit on him. When she said that, those words sounded vaguely familiar. He took another look at her and realized this was the same young woman who had sacrificed herself and sat in that hut for a year, a month, and a day, and had broken the spell. And he had spit on her. And when he realized that, he got out of his coffin, walked over to her, and said, "First, can you ever forgive me for what I did to you? And second, could we start over again?" And she accepted his plea. And that's exactly what they did. This is one of those stories that every time I tell it, the meaning is obvious, but it's a different meaning. And people tell me they get different things from it. I'm dedicating this to my granddaughters with the hopes that if and when they hear it, they'll find some meaning that'll make a difference in their lives. And I hope it will yours too.